Okay, so you know how I feel about binging. It's that I can't sit down and just do 12 hours at a pop.
Yeah.
And I'm talking about streaming, TV series kind of thing.
Netflix, Amazon,
Correct. I can't do that. So, we talked about Midsummer Murders, which, by the way, 20 years of Midsummer Murders.
Wow.
Has nothing to do with what I'm talking about today. Here's my latest, and I don't know how to stop it. So, you know how Netflix says, since you watch Midsummer Murders, you might like this.
Yep.
And so it's an international kind of detective thing.
Okay.
It's called Detective Anna. And it's Russian. But it's
Is it Russian language?
Yes.
So you have to read it.
I have to read. It only has one season, which is probably good. But it's only 2 years old.
Okay.
Okay? But it takes place in the late 1800s.
All right.
Before the Russian Revolution, before the Bolsheviks took over and all of that.
Yep.
So, and it takes place in this really small town called Zatonsk, I think. Sure. I don't know how to stop watching it. It's not that good. It's okay, but here's what I told my children. It's a mix of Disney's That's So Raven and Sherlock. Because she sees dead people, this girl. Detective Anna.
So throw the Sixth Sense in there a little bit, too.
Yes.
Okay.
So there are seances, and then there's detectives. The costumes are beautiful. The acting is fine.
Okay.
The writing is meh, but I really can't tell because whoever translated it, it's weird. But I can't stop. It's a bus wreck. I can't stop watching it. This is not one that I'm saying everyone should watch.
So this is not really a recommendation.
It's just not, but it's just a thing.
It's your latest
weird.
Russian obsession.
But I don't have those. I don't care for it at all.
Well, you do now.
Oh, Detective Anna.
Attention. Top surgeons Eric and Stacey, please report to Operating Room 1. Top surgeons Eric and Stacey, please report to Operating Room 1. Surgery is about to begin.
This is Pop47. I'm Stacey.
I'm Eric, and this week we are talking about 2007's Pixar Best Oscar, or Oscar for Best Animated Feature, Ratatouille.
2007. Written and directed by Brad Bird and others, but he was the main influence of it. Here's what this goes along with us talking about this season, stuff we think you should see.
Yeah.
Now, again, if you don't like animated movies, don't see any of them. All right? Done and done. But if you're sitting there going, I can't stomach any more than one or two Disney/Pixar movies, this is a good one. This is a good
one of the best ones.
Pixar Disney movie, and that's why we chose it. Is that we wanted to talk about it to sell it a little bit, if you will. But that's why it's Ratatouille, as opposed to there are a lot of other ones. There's Up, there's Nemo, there's a lot.
There's The Incredibles.
There's a lot of good ones out there. And this is one that really kind of stood out for a lot of different reasons.
Yeah, it's one of my very, very favorites. So the cast of this is great, as most of the... there was a time when animated features did not spend big money on name actors to do voices, and I kind of thought that was okay.
Well, if you recall, it was a crazy thing that we all knew that Mel Blanc was the voice of Bugs Bunny and literally everything that Warner Brothers did.
Yeah.
He was every single cartoon character, every Elmer Fudd. He was Sam the cowboy. Yosemite Sam. He's everybody in any Bugs Bunny cartoon. Yep. Mel Blanc did all the voices. So I guess, and then if you go to Bullwinkle, and they had an ensemble, and it was mostly the writers, and then they got a couple of voice actors in there, and they did all the voices. 3 people did all the voices. But it was nobody that anybody knew.
And The Simpsons came along, and they were some cast members from Tracy Ullman's show, because The Simpsons started off as the little, as part of the Tracy Ullman show. But then they just did it and they're still doing it. Yardley Smith and Julie Kavner and Dan Castellaneta and who's the woman who does Bart? Nancy.
Oh, yeah, I know who you're talking about.
Can't come up with a name.
But
sorry,
yes.
Nancy.
Talk about, they made careers.
And basically has done nothing else, but, that I know of, but Bart Simpson, So here we have, what was a little bit more en vogue by 2007 is to get a few name actors to do some of your bits. So Patton Oswalt is the lead of this. He is Remy, the magic nose. So basically, it's a chef rat.
It's a story about a rat. It's a story about Remy, who is this rat who is weird from the rest of his rat family because he can sniff out things. Now, his family takes advantage of his nose because he can sniff things that their other rats can't by having him sniff things because he can smell poison.
Yeah, well, and you don't know whether his nose is a superpower or it is a side effect from the fact that he wants to be more cultured than the rest of his rat family.
Yeah, he is different. He's different from more than that.
Things.
When they are dumpster diving, he, doesn't want that trashy Cheeto over there. He sees this, truffle that's been thrown out or this mushroom, and then he sees this other piece of cheese, and he's like, "Oh my God, together these would be wonderful
and if I only dash of rosemary
or saffron." Correct, but he also reads. Yes. Which his brother despairs of him doing. And is like, does Dad know? Again, this is a family of rats. They are who they are. They're happy to be who they are.
Yep.
His dad is played by Brian Dennehy, who is always my long-lost love. Sorry. I heart Brian Dennehy.
Okay.
And always will. I don't know why. I can't tell you why. I just,
Okay.
It's so strange.
That's good. But the thing about, Patton Oswalt as an actor doing this, it kind of reminded me of how John Cena just did Ferdinand the Bull, which is another misunderstood animal who is kinder and gentler than you might think because one's a bull and the other's a rat. And Patton Oswalt absolutely has a softer side. I think most of us have seen that softer side in the last couple of years. His wife died. He went through a very public kind of grieving. We understand now that he's got a great big heart. At the time, he was just a comic who kind of did some raunchy comedy and was kind of a bro in a way. I mean, that was his persona anyway. Well,
to an extent. He was a thinking bro. Yeah. He's very intellectual and very articulate about that. But he was a hothead.
Yeah.
He was not quite Lewis Black angry, but he always did have a tinge of that anger going through there.
That's a really great comparison.
But I think that it's one of those where everybody knows his name kind of, and you're like, oh, he was in King of Queens. He was one of the friends in King of Queens kind of thing. But you didn't really know him.
Yeah.
Then and I think it was a good casting move to get somebody who's in that middle ground, that purgatory.
Kind of
you didn't want to get
ready for their big break.
I don't think Brad Pitt would have been a good choice. Not because he couldn't have done it voice-wise, just because you don't need Brad Pitt.
But it's interesting how you took these because, like Ferdinand, this is, and I know, it's like, I'm sorry, I can't watch these movies and turn the gay off. But, I mean, there is this sense of, here's this sensitive boy who likes ballet when everyone else likes to play soccer. It kind of has that feeling to it. Like, he wants to be a gourmet chef when everyone's like, be a man, just eat the rotten broccoli.
Be a rat.
Be a rat.
Be the rat that we have raised you to be.
Exactly. And he has a different chart for his life where he wants it to go. And he wants to be a gourmet chef. That's kind of gay. It kind of is.
I guess. But at the same time, I guess.
And so you cast this guy who just seems very Patton Oswalt, and I think it's just interesting casting in the same, but good, but clever in that way.
Yeah, I also think it's good and again, this is not a dramatic role. This is a fun, family-friendly kind of movie. Don't get me wrong, but I always think, and we've talked about this before, that comedians are oftentimes really, really good at drama.
Yeah.
Because they can get the nuance out of it and sometimes get the funny out of an unbearable situation. But no, I think it was great casting. He was adorable as this hero that is trying to please everybody. And it was really good casting and I think. And what happens, so basically this is a rat in France with an American accent, and all the rats have American accents.
All the rats come from New York.
It's so interesting.
All the people come from Paris.
And all of the people have French accents.
But they speak English with a French accent.
Correct, and none of them are French actors.
No.
Which I don't know whether somebody should be upset about this or not.
Where was Gerard Depardieu?
Oh, dear sweet God. Thank God he wasn't anywhere around this.
Or Isabella Gianni or, somebody.
Yeah, there was nobody. It was interesting because, so, back to the plot. Rat out, and they're rats out in the fields of France. And this thing happens, this calamity happens, and he ends up being separated from his family
in the sewers.
And so he's floating along on this cookbook that he was reading, and
because he can read
cookbooks, and the guy who wrote the cookbook is Chef Gusteau, and Chef Gusteau comes to Patton as a ghost. Basically a figment of his imagination. He keeps saying, I'm a figment of your imagination. But
although it kind of thought he was actually a ghost.
Well, it kind of goes back way.
The way it goes along, you kind of think that, in this movie, hey, if rats can read cookbooks, you can also have ghosts of French chefs
unless it is really unless it's his conscience.
Maybe.
But anyway, moving right along.
But Jiminy Cricket was real too, so
there's that.
So
anyway, so he floats down and he comes up. Finally, he finds himself, coincidentally, outside the
Gusteau's restaurant in Paris, France.
So basically, he goes in there and he finds this kid. Linguini is the name of the kid.
Linguini, because that's French.
Yeah. Well, he's from Italy because Gusteau had an affair. Okay, now I'm getting into the flow chart.
Did they name their kids Linguini in Italy?
That was his last name.
Oh. They never called him anything else.
No, everybody was calling Gusteau was his last name.
I know, but I know Gusteau is his last name.
Right. But and Skinner was the chef's last name.
Did nobody in this movie have... So the women have first names and no last names.
Interestingly
and the men have last names and no first names.
Because they're more important. They're more important, Eric.
All right.
# men are more important.
All right.
So, anywho... oh, my God. Where was I? Oh, yes. So he's here in this restaurant. Linguini is this kid who is the cleaner-upper. He just got a job at...
The Garbage Boy is his official title.
Right. But he, and basically they go through all this drama, and Remy ends up manipulating Linguini into being this good chef.
Yeah.
So, and you watch the movie and you'll see how a rat is able to manipulate.
There's a montage.
Yeah, which there should be.
That goes through their education
Every fun romantic comedy should have a montage. So... that's where we are, that's how Remy is fulfilling his destiny to a point in that he is able to manipulate Linguini to create these foods. There is drama in that there is also out there a food critic.
Uh-huh.
There is also the mean head chef, Skinner, who is trying to make a name for himself and make money off of Gusteau's name.
Who has a French accent, even though his name is Skinner.
Skinner. I don't know how to help you with that. I don't know how to help you with this. You're going to keep having problems like this, Eric, the more we go along. And then there is one of the sous chefs is a girl, again, no last name because she's a girl, Colette. And so there's that romance with Linguini that's going on. Then there is Remy's family of rats finally finds him. There's just a lot of different relationships going on, but that's kind of the plot, is that this rat is trying to become a chef.
Rat wants to be a chef. It's tough to be a chef in Paris when you're a rat because there is no place more rodent phobic in the world than a kitchen. Especially a kitchen of a formerly 5-star restaurant who wants to be like, a gourmet.
So they talk about that a lot, that apparently when Gusteau was alive, at one point his restaurant was a 5-star restaurant, and then it lost stars and ended up he died sad or whatever. Yeah. That's the story of Gusteau. But what's fun, here's a fun fact. I have fun facts coming up later. But in France, you can only get 3 stars in your restaurant.
Oh, really?
There has never been a 4 or a 5-star restaurant. So they totally made that up.
All right. Well.
Which, again, let's look at the cast. Again, this is not a French production.
No.
By any means.
No.
Did they do any research on French restaurants? Don't know that they did. Do not know that they did to know that there are only 3 stars.
And they might have just said, let's, because Gusteau's was a 3-star restaurant by the time we met them, so they would have been down to 1 star, which they didn't want to say 1 star, so that's fine. The rest of this cast. Let's go through the rest of the cast. So Linguini, what a name.
The kid.
Lou Romano. Who?
Yeah, I know.
Who is Lou Romano?
I know.
He was great.
He was really good, and I sat there with the girls last night. We were watching it, and all I could think of, his way of speaking sounded like Ross from the TV show Friends.
Yeah.
That's all I could picture was Ross.
And you didn't have to pay for Schwimmer. You just could get Lou Romano because he's more of a production designer artist type, but he does these voiceovers apparently.
And he was production designer for many of Pixar movies. And I don't know whether they just couldn't find somebody, and he went in and, who knows how he got the job.
No, they probably just, you're putting these things together, and he said, and then Linguini says something like blah, 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 and Brad Bird hears him and goes, that's actually the perfect voice. Let's just use him. Might as well.
And that's what happened, and he was perfect in it. He was really, really good. This one surprised me, and I had to look it up several times because I didn't believe it, because it doesn't sound like her. The girl, Colette, and she is the only woman in this, although she does make mention she's the only woman in the kitchen.
Yep.
Is Janine Garofalo.
That's awesome. I love the fact that it's Janine Garofalo.
But it didn't sound like her. I kept listening for her. Obviously, Patton Oswalt sounds like Patton Oswalt.
Yeah.
And so Gusteau is played by Brad Garrett, the comedian. Also was in Everybody Loves Raymond.
Yep.
Big, tall guy, has a big, tall voice kind of thing. He's speaking in a French accent, but I heard Brad Garrett. I knew it was Brad Garrett. I did not know it was Janine Garofalo at all. She didn't sound like herself at all. Now, she was also putting on a French accent.
A big, heavy French accent.
It was that cheesy American
Very heavy, yes.
French accent. Then Skinner, the mean chef, was played by Ian Holm. You've seen him in everything, from Chariots of Fire.
Well, he was He was older Bilbo Baggins in the Lord of the Rings movies.
Correct. There you go. That's who it was. Ian Holm played Skinner. He's British, but he was also playing with a French accent.
Big old French accent.
Exactly.
Like that.
This one was fun, and I didn't realize who it was. I kind of thought it was somebody else, but it was the critic, Peter O'Toole.
So great.
Now he also did a French accent.
Yep.
But
a subtle French accent.
But it was subtle.
Yeah.
But he was very, very good. He was very, very good.
Yeah. And you actually have to do some acting in this. It seems like a very one note, and it is one note for most of the movie. But then at the end of the movie, he makes a turn.
But he was believable. Yeah. I did not feel he was one note at all. I thought he was wonderful, and I was kind of surprised that he was wonderful because it's Peter O'Toole, and I love Peter O'Toole. Don't get me wrong, but I was like, voice acting? Can he do that?
Yeah.
Yes. The answer is yes.
I actually that didn't surprise me at all, because The Line in Winter, which is one of the I want to talk about this holiday season. Is his voice is one of his best instruments in that movie. I mean, it can do so much. It can be very soft and seductive. It can be very booming. It can be very authoritative. There's a lot he does with his voice, so it doesn't surprise me a bit.
Yeah. And so I mentioned that Brad Garrett plays Gusteau, the dead chef mentor. He also has that French accent, that American French accent.
Very fun.
I thought he was great.
He was.
He was great. Now, John Ratzenberger. If you know anything about Pixar movies, you know it's now a thing. But he was, I think, coincidentally put in the first 3 that they did. He played a voice actor.
Yep.
In each of those. Now it's thing where every Pixar movie, John Ratzenberger has a part.
So Cliff from Cheers is in every Pixar film.
Correct.
And at first we looked at this cast list and said, Mustafa. That's the Lion King. Like, what the hell is Mustafa in this movie? Well, Mustafa is the maitre d', who has, basically 2 big scenes where he runs back into the kitchen and says, the customer's asking for this, what should I do? That's all Mustafa does. He's not a key player.
Right, and I did not recognize John Ratzenberger's voice, which is weird because usually he is a very distinctive voice, and you know who he is.
Yeah.
He did not play that in this.
But they stuck with tradition. They got him in there.
They got him in there.
Yep.
And then I mentioned this... Remy's dad is played by Brian Dennehy. I love Brian Dennehy. I've already made mention of that. And I thought he did great. I thut he did great as a dad. Because the dad has some moments. She's fanning
herself, for those who can't see. She's a little flushed.
I'm a little clump, or whatever the word is. But I think, as I said, they had a great voice cast here. And that helped tremendously.
That and the quality of the animation. I was so taken with how they animated hair in this movie. Both the hair of the people, but even more so the hair of the rats.
Well, and that was a big thing about this movie. That was a big technological breakthrough.
Yeah.
And here's what's funny is that almost each movie that Pixar would make, and then even when they became, with Disney, it's like, oh, we have a new technology that gets us to do hair better. I mean, that's like the hardest thing to ever do. Mm-hmm. And in this one, you see, it looks amazing.
Yeah. And I remember this one piece where Remy is coming out of the sewer for the first time after being separated from his family. And he's just kind of, jumping on a pipe and doing this and doing what Rat's going to do. And then all of a sudden he slows down just a little bit and gingerly walks around a mousetrap that's got a piece of cheese in it because he's smart enough not to take the cheese. And then it goes back to full speed. And I was like, how long did it take to draw that mousetrap? And how long does it, and just that the way that the pace slowed down for just a minute, you get the comedy and then boom, we're back into it. The animators for Pixar are just incredible. And they lend themselves to a lot of action-y kinds of things. And that was really an action sequence, even though, he wasn't being chased by anything. He was just moving like a rat moves through the sewers of Paris, and he was eventually going to pop out and see the Eiffel Tower. But I thought it was so great. One of the reasons I just love this movie is they use all of this technology, and they could make a movie about anything, and they made a movie about a rat who wants to be a chef.
Which is bizarre.
It's so fun, though. So fun.
Well, now we sit there and we go, that's logical. But at the time, it's just, it makes no sense.
Even before I saw this movie, I'm like, a movie about a what? Who wants to be a what? That's weird.
No, I would say to someone who brought that to me, I said, don't even storyboard it. Don't even draw one thing about it. I'm out. I'm pass.
Because even though we got to love Remy, and even though we wanted him to achieve his dream, every time I saw a rat scurry across a kitchen floor, it was still gross.
It is gross, and it was the problem was, so you have, when he was by himself, it was much easier.
Yeah.
But when he brings his family in and they're scurrying all over kitchens and whatnot.
Yes, and there's a floor full of rats.
But that also is a tribute to the animators.
Yeah.
They looked real. And, of course, then you also have your sound design people.
Yeah.
They sounded right. It's funny that you brought up
Scutter. That whole...
him running from the sewers. At one point, he has just come out, so he's wet, which, again, they're drawing wet fur.
Yep.
But it's that rat fur. It's that short, prickly stuff. It's not smooth, pretty hair stuff. Anyway, But he's running, and then he does that shake that dogs do.
Yep.
Gets everything off, and all of his fur is sticking straight up. Again, and at the time last night, I was just amazed by the animation.
Yeah.
But then something happens, and he falls or trips or whatever, and you hear this splat, which is all 4 feet out from under him, and it's on his tummy. It was the perfect sound, and I could feel it. It was just amazing.
Yeah, Pixar just does such amazing work. This movie won every inch of that Oscar for Best Animated Feature. It was the 8th Pixar movie, but the first one that was made after Disney bought Pixar in 2006. So this was a Disney/Pixar movie, the very first time that happened.
They had created it, but it was also, it was a fast track kind of thing.
Yeah, I don't know this story. Tell me more about this.
Well, and what I do know about it, normally, and we all know this, we all heard how it takes, tens of years to get animation together. So you start with a story idea. It's not going to come to fruition. It's not going to hit the theaters for at least 7 to 8 to 10 years.
Yeah, The Incredibles 2 is just now about ready to come out, and the first one was almost a decade ago.
Correct. That's right. So that's just how long it takes. So what had happened, so this was an idea, but it had several iterations that just didn't work. And then the deal was, okay, we have money to do it, but if you're going to do it, you have to do it you have 18 months. That's it.
Holy crap.
Because if you don't get it done then, it's not going to happen ever in the world.
Yeah. That
was just the way that it was. And I think some of it had to do with this merge, buyout, whatever the hell it is, between Pixar and Disney. So that was on the horizon. That was happening. So this movie came out after that merge or whatever happened, but it was really a Pixar production.
Yeah.
But anyway, so 18 months, and basically the first story that he didn't like at all. He totally killed it.
Okay.
And Brad just rewrote it.
And it's funny. We joked about the romantic comedy aspect of it, but in a way that did have a lot of beats that were very similar to a romantic comedy between this rat and this boy.
Very much.
Not a romantic storyline, obviously, because ew. But, the idea that, you let me down, so then I try to get you back, and then he feels betrayed, and then he goes back anyway because he's got to save the day because love is more important. And there's a lot of that kind of stuff going on, this relationship between the two.
There is, and that's what I want to talk about, but let's talk about that because this, to me, I feel, in a nutshell, this is a movie about relationships.
Yeah.
And so I want to talk about that when we come back. Food, even if you don't, this is still a good movie.
I tell you what, my mom used to make ratatouille when I was a kid, the actual dish. Mm-hmm. It's just it's soggy vegetables in tomatoey water. It's not... Spoiler
alert, because they tell you this in the movie, it's the peasant's dish.
Yes. It is. You don't need it. I mean, it's veggies and water. There's no meat at all. And it's just big root vegetables that will just grow in France. And so this is a peasant dish. It's not a tasty meal. Now, they make it, when they make the fancy, gourmet version of ratatouille at the end, it looks lovely. It looks
beautiful.
But not my favorite.
Yeah. So, for me, this was a movie about relationships.
Yeah, very much. And dreams. And dreams.
And dreams. Yeah. No, dreams have something to do with that and ambition. But... It's relationships, and some of it is with, like for Remy, it is his relationship with food.
Yeah.
We saw that even the first scenes when he's with his family, whose relationship with food was just how fast can I get you in my stomach.
Exactly.
They didn't care what it was. They literally, and they said that, we don't care what it is.
And at one point he asks his brother, what are you eating? He's like, it used to be some kind of wrapper. And then the look on Remy's face is just like, that is so disgusting.
But that's where, Remy has this, and he is a smaller rat than his brother. His brother is a fat rat.
Yeah, big fat rat. Yep.
Because he eats anything. And but to me there was a lot, and again, but Remy has a great relationship with his brother. They're cohorts, and he loves his dad. He has a good relationship with his dad and all of his family members. So that's always there.
But
that's what families do.
But yeah.
And his family has a problem because he's different.
Yeah.
That's a lot of what some of the argument is about, because he's different or he wants different things. But so that's always there, though, this relationship with his family, and it gets in him into trouble. But then also there's his relationship with Linguini, this stupid kid who, I don't even know if Linguini wants to be a chef.
I don't think he does. He wants a job.
He wants a job.
And the only reason he shows up there is because he's got this letter
from his dead mom.
That thinks might be able to get him a job doing something.
I want to do a little pause here. Do you remember, at the beginning when he is there introducing himself to Skinner, who is the mean head chef? And he's like, who is this? And he's like, and he said, here's a letter from my mom. And so Skinner says, so how is your mom? And he says, and Linguini says, she's well, I mean, she could be better. And then one of the sous chefs says, she's dead.
She's dead.
And I'm going, this is Linguini. It's like, she could be better. She's dead. What do you mean he's not a bright boy.
No, I didn't know what to make of that.
That bothered me a little bit.
I thought what was
It's funny. But it bothered me.
Yeah, I thought what was going on there was he's just trying. He wants this job so badly, he doesn't want to offend somebody and bring up something awkward.
Okay.
So he just comes up with the whatever.
And what it showed, I will say, it showed he's an idiot.
Yeah.
And but Remy has a relationship with him and has to have a relationship with him if he wants to fill out his dream.
And Linguini says to him at one point, neither of us can do this without the other. And that's true. They really do depend on each other in order to, A, for Linguini to keep his job, and B, for Remy to be the chef he wants to be.
So then we have Remy and Gusteau, which is a figment of his imagination, or
I
ghost.
think he's a ghost. I'm just going to go out on a limb and say he actually is the ghost of Gusteau, who's come back to coach him a little bit.
I think it doesn't matter. I'm going to say that because it could be either way. Whichever way, it works. And, but it doesn't matter because Remy sees him as a mentor.
Yeah.
But he's a mentor, but he's also a conscience. I see him going, at the end, at one point at the beginning, he's floating on this book down this sewer. He's floating on this book that saved his life, but he's separated from all his family.
Yep.
And Gusteau is like, go up to the
Yeah.
Upstairs, get out of the sewer and see what's up there. And that's what pushes Remy from just sitting in the sewer more.
Yeah. Waiting for his family, hoping to be rescued.
Yeah, but again, correct. He's waiting as opposed to taking action.
Yeah.
And Gusto pushes him to do that.
Yeah.
Then you have Linguini and Skinner. Skinner is the mean head chef.
Yeah.
And Linguini. And Skinner has a lot of motives, and he has an agenda that has nothing to do with much else except him getting more money.
Yep.
So he has an animosity toward Linguini, and Linguini is trying to figure out, how do I work around this guy? Yeah. And then later on, Skinner's threatened by what he thinks is Linguini's skill in the kitchen. Then you have Linguini and Colette, which is your love story, which I guess you have to have it. I don't know if you have to have it.
I don't know that you have to. I mean, it was one of those things that I thought one of the cool kind of feminist moments in the whole thing is at one point, Colette's been teaching Linguini how to get around the kitchen. And he says, "Thank you for all your advice." And she says, "Well, thank you for taking it." And it kind of said, to me that no one really listens to her. And at first when I saw her and she was the only woman there, I kind of thought, really, Pixar, we can't have more than one woman in the kitchen? But then they made that into a plot point. She actually says to him, "Do you see any other women in this kitchen? How do you suppose I got here? I didn't do it by being a nice little flower and being, I have to be tough. And so get ready. You're going to be my mentee. Here we go."
And I have a feeling that was probably maybe one of selling point for Janeane Garofalo to do it. She is not going to. I think that might have been a deal breaker for her.
Yeah.
Because that's not who Janeane is. Very feminist oriented, and I think that if they'd said, "We want you to play a character who is a princess who is waiting for the person to rescue her, are you good with that?" She'd be, "Hell no."
Yeah.
And so I think that that was a good choice, and that was believable, even though it never sounded like her.
There's a moment in Ratatouille where he's going up to Paris for the first time, and he passes by this couple who were fighting, and the woman's got a gun pointed at him. And the gun goes off, and and Remy goes back to see what's going on, and they're kissing passionately. And it's like, okay, we're in France. I mean, that's just kind of but later on, there's this moment where Linguini's about to out Remy. He's about to say, "It's not me. I can't cook. It's this rat who tugs on my hair."
He's talking to Colette.
Yeah, and he's about to out Remy to Colette. And Remy doesn't want to be outed at this moment because he knows his dreams will be over. So he basically tugs on Linguini's hair to force him to kiss her. And it's not until they're both kissing each other for about, 10 seconds or shorter, but, a long time before they both kind of realize they're into it. So it's an accidental love story. It's not something, it's engineered more for plot reasons than for anything else.
Right. And then there is, Remy's relationship, I call it his relationship with himself. Trying to figure out who he wants to be, what he's willing to do to accomplish what.
Yeah.
At one point, it looks like he's going to have to either choose cooking or his family.
Yep.
And at that point, he's got to make this decision of who am I in this. And so I feel like that's also a part of this. That's why all of these relationships are all so intricate to the plot that I'm like, it's about relationships. But you're right. There is a dreams there.
Yeah, to me, I get what you're saying. I think for me, if I were to say, what is Ratatouille about? It's about the courage to be yourself and about the fact that you can live your life surrounded by a family and you do what they expect you to do and they love you for that. That's, for a lot of folks, that's not good enough. You have to really be who you are. And at some point, they have to come around. And what's great about Ratatouille is, of course, spoiler, it's a Pixar movie. There's a happy ending. His family does end up supporting him in his weird ambitions to do what he wants to do, which is not something any rat really ought to ever want to do. But they're behind him because they're his family.
I'm not sure they can biologically dream like that.
Really? We're going to do this?
I'm not saying that they can't have dreams. I'm just saying that I don't think... No, maybe I am saying they can't
I think
dreams.
You are. I agree with you. But it's, it's a cartoon. We'll go
so speaking of that, so why is it so good? Why is this... It's a rat. It really is a rat. And as we've said, that it is...
Adults who watch this will shiver with revulsion when they watch a multitude of rats scurrying across a kitchen floor and then climbing up ovens to get closer to the food. It's disgusting.
You really have to go into some sort of suspension of disbelief.
Yeah. Well, and just realize how pervasive prejudice is. You know, I mean, that's just kind of how,
I'm going to go there.
Well, kind of. I mean, it's just like, you know, you never quite get, even though you love Remy, it's this, we're programmed to think that is gross. And it is. Well,
you're right about that. That is, and the plot has a lot of levels to it. And it's funny that you said that, and I just rolled my eyes, but I'm taking back that eye roll. The reason is because at the beginning, one reason that his father has issues is that all humans are bad.
Yeah.
They will kill you. And in fact, you talk about a dark turn. There was this moment where his dad's like, you cannot trust a person at all, ever, for any reason. And Remy's like, well, I don't know, blah, blah, blah. His dad says, follow me.
Yeah. # not all humans, Dad.
Yeah.
And then Dad shows him.
And then Dad says, and it's these rats all dead.
Shop window of dead rats hanging in traps.
Disgusting.
And this store is selling rat traps.
Right, but it's showing how they kill them, and it's in their little bodies, partial bodies, and whatnot. It's a really gross scene. But again, it's his father's prejudice against human beings, which is just as strong,
and also his prejudice around you're a rat. This is the box that you cannot crawl out of. This is all we are, you know. Right. And so Remy's, you know, desire to be more than what life has prescribed to him.
So you have
biologically
this story where we have this, you know, and we've put a lot of this deep meaning stuff on it, which I think is there.
It's there.
But that's where the adults can hit it. That's why it was popular, and I think adults were able to take it. And then you have that, just as you said, the animators were so good, and slapstick and action were their forte. And so you have a lot of this. Rats and food. What fun can you do with that in a kitchen, in a restaurant? And they did.
And
literally
a lot of it.
Anything.
When he turned the ladle around so he could use it as a ladder so he could throw more leeks into this, you know, soup he was making, it was brilliant animation. It was really fun to watch, and it's also really clever, and it's very physical. You know, at one point, you know, once the humans in this kitchen find out that rats are kind of, you know, allowed in there, they all leave, and so there's this army of rats that are doing all of the cooking, and it was both disgusting and hilarious.
Now,
at the
remember
same
the
time.
first thing that happened, though? The first thing, as soon as all the humans leave and they're going, okay, I only have rats to cook with, he put them in the sanitizer.
Yeah.
This big machine that sanitizes hundreds and hundreds of dishes. He puts the rats in them, and so the big hovercraft steamer comes up, and you see all these rats. Again, animated.
Yeah.
Their hair is all sticked up and poofy, and, you know, the idea is they're sanitized.
The rats have
it's
all
okay
been sanitized.
if they cook. It's not.
It's totally not.
But in the movie, you go, okay, I guess they're clean enough. But so you have great animation, as we talked about. You have these voice actors, and again, I think it was great that it wasn't like bigger names. I don't think you want bigger names because you want the movie to stand for itself.
Sometimes it's distracting. You know, I like the fact that The Little Mermaid was some woman that you'd never heard of.
Correct.
You know, I mean, it just kind of
made her career. She went on to Broadway and has done stuff
she's
forever.
Done some great things, you know, and I like the fact sometimes that, you know, you don't necessarily have, you know, these big, really recognizable, iconic voices, unless they just work. I mean, James Earl Jones doing Mustafa in The Lion King, perfect, right? Fine.
No, who else would do that?
Yeah.
I mean, he's even...
Well, Morgan Freeman. But other than the two of them, you're done.
The two of them, you're done. You're exactly right.
You're done. Sometimes it really serves. Sometimes it's not that important. And really, these Pixar movies have so much going for them in terms of entertainment value. I don't know that it's not going to make the difference between do I buy a ticket or not because of who voices the rat.
No, I think that now, and certainly by this time, the expectation for a Pixar movie was very high because they kept exceeding whatever they had done before.
Yep.
Brad Bird, he wrote and directed this. Now, he had help. I'm not saying he was on his own, but it was very much guided by him.
And he's got a real sense of humor and a sense of pacing. It's very clear. You know, when I look at this and I put it alongside something like The Incredibles, he's got a style. There's a Brad Bird way of doing stuff, and it really comes through.
There's also some recurring themes that are in there. One of them is the stress of trying to juggle family and work.
Yep.
And how do you get those together and figuring out priorities?
Yeah. That
is also a part of his. But again, we already talked about it. Prejudices. That was a big part of this one. The rats against the people against the rats. And then, you had the food critic who had issues as well.
And it's funny, you're saying all this stuff, and I'm kind of thinking about The Incredibles, and it's like, the prejudice between the superheroes and the regular people, and the regular people and the superheroes. And Mr. Incredible's like, but I'm a superhero, I'm meant to do more. And Holly Hunter's like, no, we have to be people now because that's the rules, so you have to live by the rules. And he's like, I can't live by the rules because I'm a hero. And, there's a lot of stuff.
And then there's also the fear, which is also in The Incredibles, but the fear of the unknown, the fear of that other. Of the other. Yeah. I just finished the sentence there. The fear of other.
And parents worried about their kids.
Yes.
That's another big
very
one.
much. Yeah. And so, and again, it's in this one, and it's in a lot of the stuff that Brad Bird does, there's some of these recurring, especially if he's writing it, there's these recurring themes. Also, what was really, really good about this was the music.
Yes.
Holy cow. You felt like, and again, there is not one single French actor that I know of that was in this. But the music was beautiful. It was a lot of French music, and then there was some that had no words or whatever. But it was lovely, and all of the soundtrack, as I said, the sound design, was great with the splats and the clanks and all of that.
And all the kitchen noises, were perfect. Oh my
gosh, it was amazing.
If you just take yourself out of the movie for a second and just close your eyes and think, how did they make all of these noises? It does. Because it's you don't think about it. It's not a documentary. You're not filming something that's actually happening. Because it's animated, you have to create all of that stuff. It's a radio play. Yep. Really incredible work. And
it's amazing, and it works beautifully. The artistry, when he first comes up and he's on the roof and he looks out and you can see it, it's at night, and you can see the Eiffel Tower all lit up. It was beautiful. Paris has never looked better.
Yeah. And as a kid who grew up on a bunch of military bases, and all I ever wanted to do when I grew up was live in a big city, that moment where he discovers, oh my God, I've made it to Paris. It's just so exciting. And he did have that moment.
He goes, all this time I've been under Paris. Yeah. I've been sitting under Paris waiting for my family to find me.
Yeah.
And I could have been up here. Yeah. And that's another thing about, you talking about dreams, is that you can't sit and wait for somebody to rescue you. You got to do it yourself.
Yep.
And but we also talked about the fur, the actual artistry on the fur, but the clothing. I mean, those chef's hat have those folds. Yep. I mean, everything. Colette's hair, she had some funky red color on it too, and so it was just amazing.
And remember the bread, when she picks up the bread and says, how you tell a good loaf of bread is by the sound it makes. But not only the sound but the sound design was amazing. And then the bread, when it was being crushed and crinkled, and the pieces of the crust that were perfect.
It was amazing. I mean, I know we're really getting into the nitty gritty here, but it was the artistry. This was the best of its time.
Yeah.
And
it still holds up. It does not look dated at all.
No, not at all. And I was also talking about, when you see, because you do several times see this big group of rats scurrying everywhere, it is so realistic as to be hard to watch. Which, probably not what they were going for, but...
No, I think that is exactly what they're going for. I mean, I think they were just doing that, and having fun with it, because you can't help but watch it and go, yay, Remy, become a chef, but also gross. I mean, that's just kind of fun.
And then I think that it's also relatable, as we talked about. You're relating it to it on one perspective. I'm going to relate to it on a different. And then, my daughters are going to relate to it on a different level. Yeah. And then as you get older, you relate in a different way.
And in a lot of ways. I mean, I went right back to telling my parents that, yes, I'm going to be a theater major. And they're just like, you can't do that. You'll never find work. You'll never find a job. And we're not going to pay for it. And I just, all of this stuff just came right back to, at some point in your life, you have to decide who you are.
And you're sitting there watching an animated movie about Pixar. And that's what a good movie can do, no matter what kind it is. It can take you to a place, which is what happens to the food critic at the end of the movie.
Oh, what a great... I knew that was coming.
I forgot it.
I knew this was coming. I knew it because it was my favorite moment of watching it the first time is when the food critic, so he's there. He says, surprise me. I dare you to make me anything that will impress me. He's such an asshole.
Skinny, black hair, pale skin. He just doesn't. He
awful
looks
person. No soul. He has no soul. Yeah, And Remy wisely says, let's make him a plate of ratatouille. And Colette says, but that's a peasant dish. And he's like, no, this is what we need to do. Because apparently he's done his homework on Anton Ego, the food critic.
That's the name of the Anton. Yeah. Anton Ego.
Ego. Yeah.
And I
love the whole, our Mr. Appetite's coming and he's going to have a big ego. I mean. Yeah. That was a fun line. So Remy makes him some ratatouille. And he takes a bite of it. And it sucks him back into his childhood. And all of a sudden you see this scene and you don't know why, but he's had a hard day as a kid. And his mom says, come on in, food's ready, put some ratatouille in front of him. And he's a poor child living in the French countryside. And the taste warms his heart. And it really, it symbolizes his mom's love. Mm-hmm. And this man feels love for the first time in
a long time.
Decades. Mm-hmm. And I was totally ready for it. I couldn't wait because the animation when all of a sudden he becomes this little boy is incredible. So much about it was great. And I got a little choked up. I was like, I am such a fucking sap.
You are
like,
a little bit.
Look at me. But it is this, it says, while it says all this about everything else we've been talking about, it also suddenly makes this very profound statement about art. Mm-hmm. Whether it's a story, whether it's a Pixar movie, whether it's a piece of theater, whether it's a painting, or whether it's food, that art can transport you to someplace else. And when you start just looking at the technical shallow pieces of, the spice was too much, there was too much salt, da-da-da-da-da. But when it's really well done, it can transport you to a different place and a different time. And that's when this food critic suddenly becomes a human being again. He gets in touch with what it feels like to be loved by eating this food that was prepared with love. And that's just, it was beautiful.
It was beautiful. And it was a perfect example of don't tell me, show me.
Yeah.
As that you're sitting here watching him take this first bite. And then, as you said, suddenly there's this fade out and suddenly it's this little boy sitting there.
Yep.
And his mother just put this,
what
plate
zooms
down.
up to his eyeballs and then it zooms out of the eyeballs from the boy and you're in this world. And it just,
then you come back to him sitting in the restaurant and and even the youngest child who's watching this can grasp.
Yeah.
He's feeling like he did when he was little.
He's got a goofy smile on his face. We have not seen that at all this whole time. No. He's not writing things down anymore. He's no longer taking copious notes. He's just eating the food.
Yeah. And that was what was important about the ratatouille. That's why it was ratatouille. That's why it's named ratatouille, aside from the rat aspect. But that's why it was a peasant dish.
Yeah.
Because a gourmet dish
you wouldn't go to a 5-star, 3-star, French restaurant and order ratatouille. It would not even be on the menu.
Right.
Because it's just not what you would eat there.
So I have a few little fun facts.
Hit me with the fun facts.
I'll hit you with the fun facts in just a minute. We'll be back. Time.
Okay, I'm ready. Hit me.
Now, we had talked about how John Ratzenberger was a voice in this, and he's always a voice in all Pixars.
Do you recall, what else has he done?
Well, in Cars, he was the big 18-wheeler that the car, the door was open and the car rolled out of accidentally.
Okay.
And so, and he as the 18-wheeler, kept driving and left the guy, and that's how that story started. He was in that. He was, I think, one of the Stingray teachers or whatever in Nemo.
Okay.
I know he was in Monsters, Inc., and I can't remember what he was in there, but he was something.
All right. Well, go on IMDb and look up John Ratzenberger.
But he's been in every single one. Yep.
Okay,
cool. That's a whole thing. But if you go and look up trivia, you can find out inside jokes. We were also talking about the name of his character was Mustafa. That's not a coincidence that it's named after the Lion King. There are a lot of names of characters and places and menus or whatever that are hidden in this movie from other Pixar movies.
Okay.
Just an FYI. I'm not going through all of those. But I'm just telling you that they are out there and that they're not a coincidence. Not a coincidence his name was Mustafa. That was not
It's
a
interesting
random.
because all these other Easter eggs that are on this list are from Pixar movies, where that's a Disney Easter egg. So that must have just kind of been thrown in at the last minute in terms of, like, that's a whole different history.
Correct. But you're right. That's not Pixar, but they were pulling it in together from the Disney stuff.
Gotcha.
All right. So here's what we're talking about: the artistry, and you're like, and when the rats scurried and everything, they looked so realistic. Pet rats were kept in the studio in the hallway for more than a year, so that animators could study the movement of their fur and their noses, ears, paws, and tails.
So that's roaming free in the studios?
I have a feeling there were some cages, but they said kept in the hallway, so I'm not sure what that means. Maybe they were. How do you keep a rat caged? I don't know.
Well, I have friends who have had pet rats before, and they've, usually white rats, and so they're a little bit more like mice, but they have the naked tails, so that's a rat. And they are very friendly, and if they don't have diseases, they don't bite. If they're not rabid,
well, then maybe they were kept out there. I don't know. I didn't get any details on that.
I bet they probably just,
But that makes sense. And I do know that, and this has been animators forever and ever all the way back, would study, real animals to try to get them.
Well, I believe it, because when, the first time Remy was in that kitchen trying to dodge all those things, that looked like a rat on a kitchen floor. Ew.
Every single Pixar employee, even those who did not work on the film, is listed somewhere in the credits.
The credits took forever.
I just told you why. And so then there were also part of that inside joke thing. There were other cameos of other movie Pixar characters in this one. For example,
like what?
Pizza Planet Truck from Toy Story was in it.
Okay.
There were several Incredibles things. One, there was a Mr. Incredibles poster, but there was also several other Incredible stuff, like posters, books, or whatever.
Fun.
And Gusto's Pantry has caviar called Nemo.
Yeah.
I know that's kind of sad, actually. And then I don't remember, there was a soccer ball somewhere.
Okay.
And it was from the Monsters. It was exactly the same as the Monsters Inc. soccer ball. Also, this has a distinction of being the second Pixar movie to use the word hell. Skinner greets Linguini by saying, "Welcome to hell."
Oh, that's fun.
And I don't remember what the first one was.
Don't know,
but it was... And I guess this is a societal big deal in that that's kind of where we are. I mean, the idea that your kid hasn't heard that word.
Is that even a curse word anymore?
Well, not the way he was saying it wasn't.
No,
but, I mean, it's just...
It's a place. It's a thing. And it's hell. I mean, there are so many words that are so... and the kids have heard them all.
Now, this is...
I'm not saying encourage it, but hell is just... That's such minor league.
But I remember when I was growing up, it was a big deal.
Yeah.
But it's not now. This is a technological... Fun fact. This is the first Pixar movie to not be released on VHS.
Okay, sign of the times. Yeah.
That was a sign of time, and I don't know, and I'm guessing that after that nobody ever was. I mean that would be the beginning, and that's what 10, 11 years ago.
Why would you?
So yeah, now don't.
No, why would you?
So anyway, those are some fun facts about that. There are tons more, but and they have a lot of Easter eggs in there because they were, they like to refer to stuff. And animators do that all the time.
Yeah, exactly. When you have a decade to do something, and here you had 18 months, which was really fast-tracked, but you still had 18 months. If you wanted to put a soccer ball in the background, it's like, wouldn't it... all it takes is for one person to go, wouldn't it be funny to use the exact one from Monsters, Inc.? Oh, let's do it.
Well, and I think it was planned. Yeah, definitely.
Totally.
Well, I was talking about, you remember when the artist put the penis on the Little Mermaid poster?
Sure.
They do it all the time. They've done it forever.
Yeah.
So,
and when the Lion King plops down in the plot of dust, if you freeze frame it at the right exact moment, the dust spells out sex for a second.
Didn't know that.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Look that one up.
I'm going to. That's awful. Animators are awful. They're dirty birds. All right. So, okay, why did we just talk about this for 45 minutes? Because it's a really good movie.
It's great.
And if you say, I don't like animation, and I'm only going to watch, one Pixar, or I have my nieces over and I don't know movies, what's a good one? This is it.
This is it. And this is one that you can show to little kids, but also as an adult. I was watching it by myself. Mm-hmm. I will say I was meeting a friend for dinner, and I had just enough time to watch Ratatouille before scurrying out to dinner, and I was hungry while I was watching this movie. This movie made me hungrier, so I will say that. But that's just a sign. Well done, Brad Bird and crew. But yeah, this is one where you don't have to be a little kid. Little kids don't even have to be there. No. You can watch this movie and just enjoy the hell out of it.
You're right. I think that's a good one. Is you can watch this movie guilt-free by yourself or with other adults. You don't have to have a child in the room.
And if a child is in the room, fine. Pull up a seat. They'll love it just as much for different reasons. They'll have a different vantage point on it, and for them, different things will pop out that they will find delightful. But you will be delighted by this movie. It is just adorable. And again, I just keep on coming back to, you could have made a movie about anything you wanted to, and you made a movie about a rat who wanted to be a French gourmet chef. And to me, that is just adorable.
I think it's #, only in America. That's not really true.
No, but not in France.
Certainly. No. No, I think that this was. I think it's I think it's a fun movie. Fun for the family, and yes, I heartily agree with everything you said.
So you know what? Check us out on Facebook, check us out on Twitter, check us out at our website, POP47Room.com, and we will see you here in a week.
You've been listening to Pop-Oration with Eric and Stacey, the podcast that dissects popular culture one bloody organ at a time. Subscribe today on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, YouTube, and any other podcast listening site or app. Follow us on Twitter and Facebook at Pop-Oration Room. Check out our website at POP47Room.com for all of the podcasts, our blog, swag, and games. Until next time, when we're back in the scrubs.